Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest. Today's guest is a little bit different. We've got Chris Abbott from 1035 Capital Management. 1035 Capital Management is a St. Louis-based equity manager dedicated to generating premier investment returns for individuals, advisors, and institutional clients. They are an independent and 100% employee-owned investment advisory firm. I was introduced to Chris by a mutual acquaintance that let me know that Chris has taken a position in Skyx and is involved there, and as am I, and thought maybe we should have a conversation. We did, and compared notes and talked about a lot of things. He wrote up an article on Substack that was fantastic on Skyx, and I thought it'd be fun to have him come in and share his thoughts on Skyx. This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence.
The future is here, advancing, simplifying, while saving time, cost, and lives. Skyx's technologies won 7 CES awards and has nearly 100 US and global patents and patent applications. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb that for many years was installed by twisting hazardous wires until inventing the Edison base that became the global standard in every home and building for billions of light bulbs. Billions of fixtures are installed annually while touching hazardous, dangerous wires and risking lives. Skyx has a goal to follow Edison's path to become a US and global standard in homes and buildings for billions of fixtures, including smart home, AI, lighting, and fans, to become plug and play, advancing their performance, making homes become safer and smart within seconds, while saving time, cost, and lives. Our Gen 1 SkyPlug enables a safe installation of light fixtures, ceiling fans, smart home, and electronics within seconds, making it safe, easy, and convenient for the user. First-time installation takes 2 to 3 minutes to install, and it is safe to touch. SkyPlug is recognized as part of the NEC, the National Electrical Code determining electrical safety protocols and code nationally. SkyPlug's technology has been listed multiple times in the NEC codebooks. SkyPlug's technology is also in the IAEI, the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, and mentioned in multiple publications, acknowledging the safety and the usability that its technology brings to the electrical profession. Our Gen 2 is a smart SkyPlug, takes only seconds to install, and is integrated with the newest technologies and platforms. The SkyPlug Smart is integrated with many smart features, including phone control, voice control, energy-saving eco mode, scheduling, dimming, works with Siri, Alexa, Google, Cortana, and SmartThings. It has an emergency light, night light, color-changing light. Our Gen 3 Sky all-in-one smart home platform enhances your all-around lifestyle, making your home become smart and safe instantly. It includes the most advanced, smart, and safe features that are necessary for every home. The Sky platform installed safely and simply within minutes to the top center of your ceiling, blending inconspicuously with your decor. The Sky platform is integrated with a backup power failure LED light. In the center of the Sky platform is embedded the Sky outlet, as approved by the National Electric Code. Sky plug lighting, fans, and accessories can connect with the click of a button to the Sky platform. A series of Sky platforms installed in a home could repeat Wi-Fi signal and play the same music throughout the house. In the event of a fire, the integrated smoke and CO2 sensor would make an alarming sound. The Sky Home app can easily control light intensity, motion detector, light color control, temperature and humidity monitoring, room-to-room intercom, control volume and music in each room. Skyx platforms.
Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a unique interview today. Got somebody that actually I was introduced to through a mutual friend about what 3-4 weeks ago, Chris, maybe four,
Maybe a month and a half.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Uh, and the reason that I was introduced to this gentleman is he happens to be a big fan of a company that I am a huge fan of, no pun intended, Skyx platforms, which happens to make ceiling fans. But besides that,
Among other things, Tim. Among other things.
among other things,
Yeah.
Chris is just a really, we got time to get to know one another, and he's got a very, very interesting approach. And he just put out an article on Skyx that I thought was probably, well, not probably, is the best report I have seen hands down, and clearly understands why or sees the same things that I see and then some, actually. Um, Chris Abbott with 1035 Capital Management. You're going to have to tell me, where did the 1035 Capital come from?
It's a good question. 1035 is, I lived on 1035 Powell Street when I went to college, and it was a little tiny one-bedroom apartment that was, let's say, not very nice. But it is where I wrote my first kind of investment philosophy. It's where I got my first job in the industry. I was still there. So it's just kind of a throwback to where it all started. So when things go well, I remember 1035 Powell and I get regrounded, let's say.
Going back to your roots, man, right?
Exactly. It's a throwback to where it all started.
Yeah, I love that. I actually love that. That's cool. All right. So, Chris, before we go diving into the article that you wrote for Skyx,
Yeah, sure.
why don't you just kind of give everybody a background of exactly how you got here and what 1035 Capital Management does, right?
Sure.
And then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, first I'll say thank you for inviting me on the podcast. I appreciate the access to your audience. Much appreciated, Tim. And it's been great to get to know you. So I started out, I'm a Canadian originally, so from Vancouver, British Columbia. As all good Canadians, I played ice hockey. Got an ice hockey scholarship, went to a school called Lindenwood University. It's like a small private school in St. Louis, Missouri. Double major, finance, economics, finance nerd. My brother, who is an excellent saver, started investing quite young, and that kind of gave me the investing bug. Had a couple of, let's say, successes and then some big failures, and blew up a few accounts as I was going through college, and I was hooked, as it starts. I started out on the economic side, and I realized that it's actually not economics I really liked. It was the finance side. And then graduated, almost got deported, but that's a different story. We'll save that for another time. And then asked my hockey coach, if I could be his GA in order to go back and do my master's. And he thankfully said yes and made me his GA. And while I was doing that, I was able to get a internship with a company called Argent Capital Management in St. Louis. And Argent is a long-only shop. They basically had three, but really two products when I was there, a large cap product and a small cap product. I joined the small cap team, and that's just perfect for me. That's the kind of thing I like to do. My big enjoyment in life is to find the next great company, and almost all of those are small. So this is really what I do. So that's kind of how I got into it. Did that with Argent for almost 10 years. Really went from being an intern to helping manage that portfolio quite quickly under some circumstances that were very beneficial for me. So did that for about 10 years and then got my CFA, decided that I've always been an entrepreneur and wanted to start my own shop. So I was always like, okay, I'm going to get the CFA and I'll go start my own shop. Had set up some backing. Unfortunately, my backing passed away right when I started. So that's not the best thing. Started in 2019 into COVID. So that was a wild year. It was literally December 31st, 2019 when I started. So I got COVID right in the face, which was great for stock opportunities, but it wasn't so great for capital raising. And then when you got your main backer had passed away at basically the same time, put me in kind of a unique situation. But I decided I was kind of 2 feet out the door. I was going to go for it anyways. And I've been kind of scrapping at it ever since. And now finally gotten it to a point where it's sustainable. So that's beautiful. But really, it's been, I've been building it as I go, and it's not usually the way you want it to go. It's tough. So I started out with small cap. That's where my background is. And in small cap, we look for kind of really it's three things. I want a catalyst to improve sales growth, margins, or asset efficiency. We can go a little bit more into it after this, but I'll leave it at that for now. And then after I started small cap, it turns out that small cap is a small part of a lot of people's portfolios, and they don't want to put all their money into it, which makes perfect sense. That's a wise decision. Now, that being said, trying to run a business off of 5 or 10% of people's portfolios is tough. So I started talking to clients and I said, hey, what else can I do? What else do you need help with? And at that time, they said, hey, it's a 0% interest world. What can we do to get yield? And one of the things that's interesting about small cap is there's a lot of unique special situations. And you see what I call orphan preferreds a lot. So I said, hey, I can put together this portfolio of orphan preferred stocks that they yield too much for the risk of the go forward business. Okay, so maybe you're getting 13, 14% in a world where it's 1 or 2%. Okay, let's put together a portfolio. Now we've got 30 of those. That was my second portfolio for 1035. That then turned into, well, this is great. Love both of these things, but they're pretty risky, which they are. What can we do for some sort of lower risk yield? And went to the other end of the spectrum. And I said, hey, let's stop with the high risk and we'll go to the lowest risk preferreds we can find. And the reason I stuck with preferreds is I learned that by convention, if you have a bond and a preferred from the same issuer, the preferred is rated 2 notches lower. Okay. So what does that mean? It means implicitly you're going to get a higher yield. It's the same company, but you get a higher yield. Why is that? You're lower in the capital stack. Now that's pretty important if you're a triple B or a C. It's a lot less important if you're a double A or a triple A. Okay. And what I did is I went back and I said, hey, how likely is a double A or a triple A to go bankrupt? And the answer is not very. So I found I could kind of add 25 or 50 bips of yield investing in these very safe companies like the JP Morgans of the world, and utilities, et cetera, and I could provide a nice yield in very safe companies. So number 3, and then I realized that I've only got so much time on my hands, so I spent a lot of time, probably over the last 3 years, thousands of hours teaching myself how to code. And then I decided that I would automate a lot of my processes. So I automated a lot of my research process for the small cap fund. And that led me to, without an unnecessary long journey, that led me to deciding I should make a commodity trend following fund. That's a quant fund. So I have a commodity trend following fund that's been running for about 1.5 years now and doing quite well. It's all quant, so that's beautiful. And that then led me to, I am currently seeding a large cap quant fund, which has had some pretty impressive results. And hopefully I'll launch that next year. So I do a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. Right. But impressive. So you learned how to code. You taught yourself how to code.
Yeah, I did.
Impressive, man.
while running my fund. But it was born of necessity, quite honestly, Tim, because there's only so much time in the day and there's only so many things I could do. And I felt in 2022, my performance was way worse than I would have liked it to be. And one of the things is in my early career, I spent a lot of time on how do we sell better. And I built a really robust sell system. Unfortunately, though, when I left my old firm, I couldn't take it with me. And rebuilding it is an expensive and time-consuming process, especially the way I'd done it there. So I said, you know what, my performance was poor and I need to fix it. And this is one of the big areas that hurt me. So I endeavored in how can I rebuild this? And in order to do it, I had to teach myself how to code.
How big is your fund? How big?
We're about 8 million now across all the assets, but small cap is the biggest one.
Okay.
And then I've got a couple more million coming in right now. So hopefully we'll be 10 pretty soon. So
Okay.
Not huge. But prior at Argent, we did about 250 million. So that's where I came out of institutional world with much bigger clients. They were all institutional clients, pensions, endowments, that sort of thing. So that was kind of where I cut my teeth. And I'll say one of the things, lesson learned for anyone else that wants to start a fund with basically no money when their backer dies. Lesson for you out there if you're listening. what you'll run across is it's very difficult to get onto platforms until you get about 25 million in AUM, which I mentioned before. I had to pivot, and one of the pivots I made was all my background and all my contacts are in institutional investing. I don't really know anyone in retail land. So I had to switch, and I had to go find high net worth individuals and do a little more retail focused marketing, which took me a little while to kind of pick up. But things are moving in the right direction finally, and no complaints. But it's part of the world when you're what's the old Mike Tyson saying? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, you get punched in the face and you still got to move forward. So
that's so true, man.
Yeah.
So what's just the biggest hit you've ever had in terms of an individual stock?
Unfortunately, I've had several companies go to zero. So not while I owned them, but they've ultimately gone to zero. I've had two kind of publicly that were pretty bad. One was Vertex Refineries or Vertex Energy. They were an oil and gas refinery. It was a bit of a, I mean, for me, it worked out okay because I actually owned it at like $1 and it ripped up to 16. And I took the vast majority of my shares off in that period. Where I went wrong is I started buying it back when it fell under 5. So that wasn't so good. I made it a big position, and then it fell to about 1, and I was pretty public about liking what Vertex was doing. Unfortunately, their transition to renewable diesel wasn't at a good time. Renewable diesel market fell apart, and their execution was poor. Combined with too much leverage, you're in trouble. So that was one that definitely didn't work out in my favor. I had another one that was kind of pretty public, a company called Amorous. Again, worked out well in my favor, but there's a name that I really...
Is that the education one?
Chegg, I think, is maybe one you're talking about there, but Amorous was, they made products from sugarcane oil, basically. So they would ferment sugarcane oil into any number of products. And that's an area I wrote an article on it at like $2 and it went up to 25. I got out of most of my position around 15 to 20. Again, I got tempted when it fell below 5 and I was like, here we go again. And unfortunately, no such luck, and that one went away. But thankfully, both of those I sold before they actually went away. But I did take a loss on the second trip. So a bit of a note I've noticed for myself is like if it's gone really well the first time, probably just leave it alone and don't go back to it the second time.
So how about
your
biggest win?
I'll tell you an interesting win I had. I mean, it might not be my biggest, but it's the most unique. Okay. My most unique win was I owned a company, trying to think of what the name was. This is right when I started 1035. It was in 2020. Give me a second. It'll come to me. Well, it'll come to me while I tell the story, but essentially, long story short, they had an audio codec that was in the iPhone earbuds. Okay. And then when you went to the iPhone earbuds Pro, they had like four of the codecs in it as opposed to 1. So this company, that was their only thing. That's what they did. Okay. And this company, things were going really well. And then a rumor came out that the Pro iPhones were starting from like one of the most well-respected Apple analysts. So I doubled. I made that my biggest position. I was like, oh, it's coming. And this will be huge for the company. Okay. So I made it my biggest position. And then maybe 3 days later, it got bought out for 100% premium. Okay. Well, that's great. Okay. But then like 4 days after that is when the market started cratering on COVID. Okay. And I was like, what is going on? And like, so the deal price, I forget the exact deal, but it was like 10.50 or 10.25 or something like that. And the stock was at $4 or something before 4 or 5. And the stock just started falling. And by the way, the buyer was Dialogue Semi, all cash. It was a tiny company. Even after the buyout, it was like 600 million. Like it wasn't a very big deal. No Hart-Scott-Rodino issues, nothing like that. Okay. It's like 10.50 buyout. The stock starts falling. It's 10.25. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I just sold my position. I was like, I'll ask questions later. Over the next like 3 days, the stock proceeds to fall below the price when the deal was announced.
Wow.
And I was like, what the fuck? This is stupid because this, I've had time to look at it. I'm like, this deal's definitely going through. So I bought it again and I made 150% on the same deal twice.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean, plus or minus 150%, but yeah. So that was one of my most unique ones. Never let them tell you small cap's efficient, because it ain't.
So, I look at, I love small caps, and what you said earlier about finding that next great company is right on par with where I'm at. I mean, if look, the Nvidias, the Apples, the Microsofts, they've already become, in the law of large numbers, it becomes very challenging when you're one of those big behemoths, right?
Mhm.
And I know they're going crazy right now and they're hitting highs, but I would suggest that those stocks are more dangerous now than small caps are. And or if you look at what has happened to small caps over the last 42 months, it, for me, I don't know about you, but it's one of the longest and most painful pullbacks I've seen in small caps. In my entire career, actually, it's
Mhm.
never been this long in duration, where it's just constant beating down, right?
Yeah,
And I
the
think
almost 3 years or whatever was the
I,
longest period of straight just
I look at
destruction.
that as I've never been more excited about the small cap space than I
Mhm.
am today, right? Because I think there are a lot of interesting, good companies out there that have navigated through a pandemic, which I'm pretty sure is the first time we've ever had one of those. Navigated through the worst
Don't forget about the
supply
Spanish flu.
chain. Huh?
Don't forget about the Spanish flu. That was quoted a pandemic, right?
Well, yeah, that was a long time ago, Chris. Come on, man.
In our lifetimes, in our
Yeah,
lifetimes,
in
for
our
sure.
lifetime, the supply chain issues that were caused because of COVID, which
And
were
the response
historic
to it. Yeah.
in nature.
Yeah.
Then we had the fastest interest rate hike cycle in history.
Which is
And
marginally worse for small cap, right? And micro cap.
exactly. So you
Yeah.
look at, for them to be able to navigate through that, what I would call challenging business environment,
That's nice of you.
is pretty darn good. If
Yeah.
they haven't blown up their cap table and they've actually grown their businesses and gotten more stringent with their spend, these companies have grown their businesses through that environment. And how have they been rewarded? Their stocks are down 70 to 90%.
Yeah. Baptism by fire. If you made it through this, then, you know, let's say a lot of the weekends were sorted out over the last few years.
Right. So what
Yeah.
happens when you have this kind of environment is that the people that really don't understand or know the company, um, they have no conviction, right? So it's easy to get shaken out of a stock when your
Mhm.
account is going down every single day. You're like, that's it. I can't take it anymore. I'm out. Right.
That's the value of fundamental analysis right there.
Right. It's all,
Conviction.
but also for me, and I don't know about you, but sometimes you have to have a little bit of vision forward. Um, and you got to get to know management. You have to understand who's leading the charge, right?
Especially in small and micro cap, two things I often say. One, you're betting on the jockey, not the horse. It's about the management team often in small cap. And then the other thing to think about is just like, if it were so easy that it were just a numbers game, right? Then there would just be machines doing this, right? There's clearly more than just a numbers, right? Fundamental analysis is important. It builds conviction. But if it was just a matter of going through and finding the right numbers, there would only be computers. There would be no need for a human. Let me assure you that my quant work goes way faster than I do. There would be no point for me. However, it's more to it than that. And you have been, I think, made a great call on UMAC and RCAT. What's the fair value based on the fundamentals? Is it for UMAC? Is it 250 or is it 2450? Right? It's been in all of those places in the last 2 weeks. So there's more to it than just the fundamental value. Now, there's been a big change there, and that'll improve the fundamentals going forward. But that's where you start to get into it's not just the numbers. It's you got to have some vision. And where is this going? What does that mean to the numbers in the next 5, 10 years? 3
Right.
years. Pick your time frame.
A lot of intangibles that
Hmm.
I look for, right?
Gray area, as I call it. Plenty of gray area.
Yeah. And what's going to give me the conviction is, do I trust management?
Hmm.
And that takes time, right? I don't go all in on anything. I mean,
Hmm.
that was one of the biggest lessons I've learned over my career, was going all in on something can be literally biggest hit I ever took was, I mean, and I was all in on this thing, and it was a patent, really a patent play.
We talked about that because I have a patent play right now.
Oh
I was
my
telling you
God, it
about.
was
Yeah.
so painful. It was so painful because I just, in my head, how can you go through a jury trial and be found guilty? How willful infringement, go through a higher court guilty, and U.S. Patent Attorney's Office was challenged, I don't know, maybe 50 times. Every time came back in favor. I'm thinking there's no way this
Slam
is
dunk.
going
Yeah.
to go the wrong way at the Supreme Court. Wrong. Two judges vote against one. All of that stuff got wiped. I mean, it was, as I look back at it now, dumbest move I probably ever made because it was a flip of a coin.
Oh, well, that's what I was exactly going to say. Is that's a binary outcome event, right?
Yeah.
And binary outcome events to put all your money onto is pretty risky. I mean, any stock is risky, but it's especially risky in a binary outcome.
Yep. Look, it was
Actually, you don't know this about me, Tim, but I wrote my thesis for my master's on how to arbitrage the FDA announcements for biotech stocks.
oh, is that right? That's another perfect example.
Yeah, it's a binary event for exactly that. Yeah.
So what's funny about that is one of my when I first got into investing in stocks, I had a win right out of the gate. And
That's the worst thing. It's like going to the casino and
the
winning the first
worst
time.
thing
It's
that could happen. And then
not
I had
good.
another win in a
Yeah.
biotech. I didn't know anything about this company, nothing.
Yeah.
Biotech, right?
Yeah.
And some news came out, and this thing just went ballistic, right? I had no idea what phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. None of that.
Yeah.
CRLs, or no CLRs, complete response letter.
No, you're right.
None of
CRL.
that
Yeah.
stuff, right? And I had this huge win in biotech, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just going to focus on biotech.
I too have been there at one point in my life, Tim. I too have
Worse.
been there.
I got my ass kicked so bad in biotech because I didn't have a clue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it now, and you're right. Binary events, binary events, binary events, right? You really want to try and avoid going all in on binary events.
It's funny
Big
because
mistake.
I have a good friend who runs he's a CEO of a biotech, started it from nothing, like literally from the bench. And I'll neglect to mention his name. Great guy, love him. But the number of times he's gone from, 10 millionaire to zero air on the same biotech company is crazy.
It's tough, man.
Yeah.
It is such a tough bit. They're cash burning machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cash burning machines. All that news and all the fluff is all so they
Mm-hmm.
can raise more capital because they're going to need to burn it.
Well, and in the case of my friend, he runs a clinical trial. He's doing a phase 2, and the placebo did better than he expected.
Right.
His thing did fine, but the placebo did so good that it made it not statistically significant. So he had to go do it again, which, there goes 10, 20, 30 million bucks.
Right.
It's like, oh, way. And like
Such
raising
a
like that
painful
is just a
thing.
nightmare. Yeah, biotechs are a nightmare. But that was actually because of my thesis. That was my first job in the industry. That's where I started. Was a healthcare analyst.
All right. So I want to move on to Skyx now because
Yeah, for sure.
I think people maybe have an understanding of where we've come from.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you see? I mean, your article was extremely comprehensive. I mean, I love the fact that you really poured some time into this. You didn't just whip this thing up, and you really spent some time.
No, I did not. Yes,
And
I did spend a little bit of time on it.
what excites me about it is, I consider you this is a real Wall Street guy. This is a guy, and I've been waiting for somebody. I've always felt that somebody on Wall Street is going to get this, and I didn't know who it was going to be. But when I read your article, I knew right off the bat that, yeah, you get this. And
I would say I'm not on Wall Street, so not to contradict you, but I would say institutional. I'm an institutional guy that gets.
You're an institutional.
Yeah,
To me, that's a Wall Street guy,
yeah,
right?
for
I
sure,
mean,
for
you're
sure.
institutional. You're a player.
But I'm humble, Tim. I'm humble. I don't want to. I don't want people
I
to.
know you are. I
I don't
know you
want people
are.
to take the wrong impression.
I like that about you too, right? So, I mean, you and I, when our first meeting, we were supposed to have, it was supposed to be a 45-minute meeting. We wound up going 2 hours and 45 minutes, right?
Mhm.
Very similar in the way we think about things, and I think you do definitely have some vision. But just real quickly, tell me what it was. How did you even find Skyx?
Purely luck. Honestly, it was totally luck. I came across them at a conference that I had was invited to be on a buy side panel, and the dinner after the buy side panel was hosted by Skyx. So that's how I came across Skyx the first time, totally by luck. I sat next to Lenny and listened to Ronnie's pitch. That was it. And thankfully, I was next to Lenny because I was able to ask him some questions that I had through the pitch, and he was able to adeptly answer them. And then I was kind of like, well, this is kind of interesting. That was back in, I want to say that might have been 2020, 2019, like
Okay.
years ago, maybe 21, but like it was a long time ago. And I'd seen him there, and I thought, this is pretty interesting. And I bought just a tiny little position, like 50 bips for my fund, and just kind of watched it. That was at like maybe 250, something like that. And I just kind of watched it. And then over time, it started getting cheaper, but you got like the GE license deal. And I was like, that's a big deal. But then you got the Home Depot thing, and then you got the Wayfair thing, right? And I just saw that he kept, and the Rui one as well. I just kept putting up good partnerships with big players, and I was following them, and I was like, I see where this is going. This product makes a ton of sense. And if you can really get the all-in-one platform going, I'd had another company I owned, and I mentioned it in the article. I owned a company called Control 4, and their whole business model was integrating the various smart home devices into a controller. And I made a lot of money on it, but that being said, I constantly got complaints that this thing's too expensive and it's too hard to use. So when I saw the all-in-one platform and I'd seen the partnerships and I had that prior experience of like, oh, this is the solution. And then I really started thinking about it, and I'm like, wait a second, if you start connecting in all these devices to basically a router, let's call it for ease of conversation, now you get all that data. And what does everyone do with data? They sell it. Okay. And so now you've got this data vault of recurring revenue. And then I started looking into it, and I realized, hey, you've also got these sensors built into the all-in-one platform that you can have a recurring revenue business out of. And I was looking at a lighting business with a recurring revenue tech play. This isn't priced right. And no one seems to understand it. So that's how I got into it.
You just nailed two things. Now, I have known no one, and I've always kind of had the data thing in the back of my head. And I'm not talking about invading anybody's personal privacy. I'm saying that with Wi-Fi, you get zip code. With Bluetooth, you get every other Bluetooth thing in the home. Right? So I know what size TV you have, what model number it is, what year it is. I know what car you drive. I know literally anything that's got Bluetooth. I know, right?
Here's one that's more uncomfortable, but there's definitely people out there that are using Wi-Fi signals to map your house.
Right.
The amount of data that you can get is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So
Yeah.
I viewed this as one of the biggest data aggregators on the planet, right? But I didn't want to focus solely on that. I mean, I'm looking at it from a construction background because I've put in probably, I don't know, 500 ceiling fans in my little career.
In my comment, I forgot to mention that when I first met Ronnie, I was renovating like a 1900 house, and old knob and tube wiring everywhere, just a real disaster. But I was changing lights all the time, and I kept shocking myself. So like that part resonated with me very quickly as a guy who's installed some overhead lights and been like, this sucks.
And it's no joke. I mean, every
Yep.
year, uh, there are injuries from people falling off of ladders
Oh
because
yeah.
they're up on a ladder for 40 minutes trying to hold on to the fixture and wire it up, hardwire it to the ceiling. It's a pain in the ass, man. You need 3 arms, right?
Yes.
I've done a ton of them, and the ceiling fans are the most challenging. I mean, those are a
Yes.
real pain in the neck,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Because they're
Plus,
big and bulky. Yeah.
if you don't get the mounting just right, you get the wobble. The wobble can
Hmm.
screw with the wiring. You get a house fire. Next thing you know, people die. Every
Or
year
you
this
don't
happens.
tighten the grommets well enough. What any number of things can lead to a
Right.
lot of issues. Yeah.
There's a lot of issues that can happen. And I look at it and I say to myself, the efficiency and time of installing is unbelievable. The safety aspect is unbelievable, right? Now they're
Hmm.
filed for the mandate, whether it happens, doesn't happen. I think you use this system one time, install one ceiling fan with this system, you will never go back to the old way. There's no way.
Well, luckily enough, Tim, I think they do get the mandate. The question to me isn't whether they get it; it's if, or sorry, when. It's not if. Excuse me. And
I'm
the
not
reason, like,
banking on that though,
yeah,
right? I mean,
I
if it
agree. You
comes,
don't need to. I agree. You don't need to because they've got plenty of reasons and ways to grow the business without the mandate. But I do think you get it.
I agree with you 100% only because within the NEC, was it the bylaws or whatever, it spells out the fact that if they have a process that
Hmm.
injures or kills someone because of that process, if new technology comes out that will change that process and reduce the likelihood of injury or death, it must be mandated.
It's not quite as explicit as that, but like, yes, that is the inference that you get from reading the code. Okay.
But
But just to be clear, it's not quite as explicit. I will also add to that. If you look at the last two things they mandated, the GFCI and the ARCI,
yep,
the arc circuit interrupter, which basically stops electrical arcing and thus fires, okay, which is an issue. And then the GFCI, which is used in wet environments to prevent electrocution, okay, or
right.
reduce the likelihood of electrocution. Um, both of those products were mandated after there was a rigorous safety study done, and that study proved a life-saving benefit. So the Sky plug, the initial innovation that Skyx has beyond the smart stuff, uh, will, no question, reduce the likelihood of electrical arcs and thus fires, as well as electrocution. It's built into the way it works. And I know that they're currently engaged in a study on ladder falls that they're putting together that I believe ultimately, as a guy who's fallen off a ladder twice, uh, I could tell you it does happen and it hurts. So I was lucky that neither time I was all that high up and I was pretty young, so made of rubber. But ladder falls do cause a lot of injuries. I've seen it.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
I think once they get that study out there, they can prove the lack of electrical arcing because of the three-prong system, and then they can prove that the less time you spend on a ladder, the less likely you are to get hurt on a ladder, which is kind of a no-brainer. Um, they've just done what the other two that got mandated did, which is you've taken a large academic study and you've proven that this is going to save lives and
Right.
injuries, right? That's really the last step for them. And if you look at the last two paths, that's how they got there. You put it all together, you get the trade name, you get sections in the code book. So Skyx already has the trade name, it's weight supported ceiling receptacle. They're in 10 sections of the NEC code book. So now they're putting together the ladder fall study and the safety studies. To me, it's a matter of when, not if. But to your point, you don't need any of that for this stock to work.
That's the thing for me. I look at it from a whole nother angle, and why the mandate has never been anything that's. I'm not stressed about it. If it happens, I look at that as a slam dunk, right? That
Yeah.
obviously changes the game completely. But
Yes.
I think even without it, just people becoming aware of the product. Let's put it this way: they've got 60 websites. You mentioned that in the article, which I
Mhm.
thought was a brilliant acquisition,
Agreed.
because now you have, you know, distribution or way,
As they call it, the what do they call it? Lead and seed approach, right?
right? Then I see the Home Depot and the Wayfair, and you know, I've gone to Wayfair. I've looked at the reviews of the people that have bought the products already.
Mhm.
You couldn't write, if you were the company, you couldn't write a better review for yourself.
Now I'm thinking I should have put that in the article. I should have done that and gone pulled some of those out for the article. Dang it. Can't go back.
Well, you know what? I mean, look, you could always do part two.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
But
With all my spare time, yeah.
you see, you know, a former electrician say, it literally says, this product is revolutionary, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to put it in the rest of my house, right? And that's what's going to get. That is what's going to happen. Here's the most beautiful part of all of it. They don't even have all of the products. What I think will be the incredible hot sellers, like the ceiling fan that's got the ceramic heater on the bottom.
The all-in-one fan and heater. Yeah, yeah. I think
You know how big of a deal that is to me? I mean, I'm in Vegas. You probably get a little colder than I do here, but
yeah, it's 15
it
degrees
gets
or something
cold
here
here,
today.
right? And I've got to heat my entire house to heat my bedroom,
Mhm.
right? If I've got a heater directly above my bed that I can reverse the blades on and push that heat down onto my bed, keeps my room nice and toasty. I don't have to run gas for the entire house,
Mhm.
right? I don't have to heat the entire house to keep my bedroom warm. And that's really all I care about because there's nobody else here, right? So that to me, energy conservation, that's a huge one. You're lowering your carbon footprint, right?
Mhm.
Big benefit that is not really seen, I don't think yet. And then I say, okay, from a design aspect, interior designers, restaurants have themed nights for the holidays. You know, think about Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day. They can switch out their light fixtures in seconds, right?
Mhm.
I live in Vegas. I went down to I'm in a banquet room at Caesars, and I looked up and I just counted all of the ceiling chandeliers, right? There's 38 of them. That was one banquet room. And I'm thinking to myself, so tonight they have a black tie affair. Tomorrow night they're going to have a disco party. Yank down the chandeliers, put up disco balls, you're ready to go, right? You can change the entire feel of a room in seconds, right?
Yep.
I'm
Well,
thinking,
it probably takes
my
60 seconds
Lord,
to install one of these lights. Yeah.
yeah, they're going to have a field day. Party planners are going to have a field day with this thing.
Well, Tim, I would say build off of that and say not that many buildings or rooms have 38 chandeliers or pendant lights. That's pretty rare. And I think it's one of the issues with Skyx and one of the reasons why it's where it is from a stock perspective. They chose to go after the highest value piece of the light market first, which is pendants and chandeliers, right? They cost a lot of money. But the problem is it's low volume. Your average house might have 1, 2, 3 pendant lights at most. We're not all in Vegas where there's 38 chandeliers in every room. But the problem here is the market, and I think analysts are going, how come we're not seeing the inflection in revenue yet? And it just is a fundamental misunderstanding of the way the business works, which is you sell the receptacle, $5-10 a pop, and then 6-12 months down the road, you sell the first fixture. And that's where the money comes in. Let's say on average, it's $250. Maybe for a chandelier, it's $300-400. Okay. But on average, you get 200-250. And that's 95% or more of the total sales comes 6-12 months after the receptacle is sold. And then thinking about the fact that they started in the lowest volume part of the market, people are like, oh, you've only got 10,000 homes installed. It's like, yeah, we've only got 10,000 homes with pendant lights. Okay. With the expectation to be in 15,000 by the end of the year. And then with the expectation to have an incremental tens of thousands next year. And I think the question that most people aren't asking is, well, how can you get an incremental tens of thousands next year if you've only done 15,000 over the last few years. Okay. And I think this gets to the crux, and it's kind of what you were talking about, right? What's the real opportunity for Skyx? It's the high volume users of the product. It's home builders, it's hotels, it's, what did you say? Designers, things like that, right? It's the people that are going to be touching a lot of lights in their lifetime. That's where we want to go. And I'll reference the Q3 call, and a couple of things came out on it that were really important. First, they expect the first home builder to start getting receptacles in Q1. And that's for 1,000 homes, so 30,000 units, on average 30 lights per house. So we'll get the receptacle revenue in Q1, but we probably don't see the fixture revenue till Q3 or Q4. But that's the first high volume user of the product. I expect to see additional home builder announcements in early 25. And given kind of the history of who they've partnered with in the past, I would expect that at some point we're going to see a big home builder, not just, a small guy in Florida, which is the first one. So we started in the smallest volume. We're moving towards higher volume. I think 2025, we see 70-80% of receptacle sales are going into commercial. And that's how you get incremental tens of thousands of receptacles installed in 2025. And I expect that to continue to grow rapidly 25 and beyond.
And that's without their key products in the stores. Now, I can tell you this. I just listened to their last call. There were a couple of things that really stood out for me. One was and I'm going to give Ronnie and his team, I'm going to give him kudos, because Ronnie has been methodical. I mean, there are people that may say, Ronnie's out of his mind, but I'm going to tell you right now, the guy has a method to his madness, and he thinks about things from every angle. And would you?
Ronnie has told me many times. Ronnie has told me many times that you see Ronnie every day, and he's got all these different ideas. But really, there's Ronnie, the idea guy, and then there's Ronnie, the paranoid guy, and it's really Ronnie, the paranoid guy, that runs everything. Which is why he's got option after option after option. And I agree. I really think the way he's built the foundation for where Skyx goes, it's really impressive what he's done.
It is unbelievable what he's gotten done. What he's got, and it's so underappreciated. But the things he has put in place are going to pay dividends for a very long time, right? Mm-hmm. I'm even going back to the being part of the for the architects, being part of their curriculum, right? Mm-hmm. Brilliant move, right? I mean, just very strategic. So, I mean, look, it may not be working the way everybody wanted it to work. He has no control over the mandate and when that gets done. I mean, that's entirely up to them, right? And the product, I could tell you, Ronnie knows he has one shot at making a first impression. Mm-hmm. If he even remotely thinks that there could be any kind of a problem with one of the products that they're going to come out with, it's not coming out until that problem is resolved.
Yep.
And you know what? I love you for that. I don't want the product to come out and have some kind of an issue that's the first experience people have, right? So his paranoid is, to me, is a blessing, because it's going to make the rollout that much more successful.
On one side, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's a blessing in that the product will likely be more successful once rolled out. The negative is it's caused delays in the product, right?
Right.
And I think that's another reason why the stock price is where it is, right? It took a little longer than everyone expected. And I often get from people, if this is so great, how come there's not more of it out there? And I have to explain to them, because really all they're selling right now is pendant lights, and that's not really a high volume part of the market. You need the full product assortment, which, referencing the call, and I think you were going to say this, we expect to get the full product assortment by the end of the year. Maybe some of it trickles into Q1. So that's really been a big, I wouldn't say stumbling block, but hurdle to gain adoption with the big home builders, to gain adoption with insurers, because they think if they can get the full product.
You just nailed the other part of the call that was a huge thing to me, that they're in talks with insurers.
Yeah.
In my head, Go ahead.
I'll reference the board, right? Look at the board and the advisory groups they put together. Look at Bob Nardelli, right? A great example of it. Former CEO of Home Depot, among others, but Home Depot, well, look who happens to be their first retail partner, Home Depot. To me, that's not a coincidence. Maybe I'm crazy, but look at their advisory board. Who else do you see on there? You see a gentleman that's, I forget his name off the top of my head, but quite highly placed in the insurance business. What do you think he's working on every day? I don't think that's an accident, let's say.
How
And of
about the
course,
round that they just did where they raised 11 million, and who was the lead investor on that? The guy that owns 16 Marriotts.
yeah, and I'd also, before we move on, because we're probably not going to come back to it, I also want to mention the former head of the NEC and the former head of the Electrical Lighting Association, both on the advisory board and both the ones leading the mandatory inclusion into the code book. Like,
Yes.
the board this guy has put together and the advisory boards this guy has put together is impressive. And I mean, we're not even mentioning all the names, but it's an impressive list, especially for a company this size.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. This is a person who has strategically put together a team that is off the charts. I mean, he literally has looked at every angle, man.
And the product and the go-to-market strategy, I think, is pretty good. The argument I hear sometimes is like, well, what's the need for the product? And what I found is, like, if you're someone that's installed a light before, there's no question what the need is. Everyone I've talked to that's ever installed a light immediately sees it. Everyone I've talked to that's never installed a light doesn't get it. So it takes a little while.
And they certainly have, if they haven't done a light, they haven't done a ceiling fan. And I'm going to tell you right now, go to Home Depot and just look up and see how long does it take to install a ceiling fan. And it says, if you know what you're doing, it takes roughly an hour.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, it could be like a 2 or 3 hour process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's absolute truth. Even when you know what you're doing, there are some ceiling fans that will take you 2 to 3 hours just because the wobble
Something's
problem.
going on.
Believe me, I've been down that path.
Yeah.
And every time I just replaced the ceiling fan in my house, and I literally was smiling. I was laughing because I'm thinking to myself, my God, Ronnie is just going to be so rich because it is such a pain in the neck, and it's literally you whittle it down to you're on the ladder for maybe 5 minutes from 30 to 40 minutes because you put
in a best case scenario, 30 to 40 minutes.
Right, 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But it takes literally all you have to do. You take the 3 wires, you put them in holes, you screw down the screws. You take 2 screws, you screw it up into the junction box. There's your receptacle.
That's the first time. Every time after that, it's even easier. Yeah.
You throw the cover plate on it. You go down to the floor, and you put the sky plug on the unit that you're going to be putting into the ceiling. You're doing that on the floor. You're not trying to wire it up on the ladder, right? So then you climb the ladder after you get the sky plug on there, and that's maybe going to take you another 3, 4, 5 minutes to do that. And then you climb up the ladder, you push a little button on the side, you put it up in the hole, you let go of the button,
Click.
done.
You're good. Yeah.
You're done. And then here's the most beautiful part of all. You can switch out your fixture literally from that point forward in 17 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't take much. There's plenty of YouTube shorts showing people swapping out those things.
17 seconds. So here's what I'm thinking. You just said some influencers. I think when influencers understand what this thing does, they're going to go wild with it because there is nothing like it. And once you use it, like I said, you will never go back to doing it the old way, right? So it may take longer. If they didn't get the mandate, I guess what my thinking has always been is that if they didn't get the mandate, the process of acceptance or adoption will take longer. The bell curve, it will take longer. But once people begin to use it, and because our minds are not geared to think in the way of, hey, let's just switch out our fixture for the football party and put up a football light for the team we like, right? People are not going to think that way because we haven't been able to do it that for ever. Like 70, 80 years, we've always done it the same way.
That's not how it works. We don't do it like that.
Right. right? So now when you realize that you can actually change the entire ambiance of the room, change the look of the room by switching out a light fixture. And then Ronnie got me, my mom said to me once, it's really cool, Tim, but why would I want to switch out my light fixtures? I like them. I like the ceiling fans I have. I like the light fixtures I have. I said, that's a good question. I'm going to ask Ronnie. And then Ronnie told me a story about his mom living with him towards the end of her life. And she was not, she was sick. And he wished that he would have had his platform done because, if his mom fell down when no one else was around and she couldn't get up, she could call 911 from the floor. When he said that, I got goosebumps down. I literally got goosebumps down my arms. And I thought, that's exactly why my mom is going to have this in her house. Because it's a safety thing. She doesn't have to have a button around her neck. Literally, if she falls down, she can call 911 from the floor. And that to me is massive.
I think that's very underappreciated with how much work Ronnie has done around the safety stuff, as well as like the UL certifications, the ANSI, the NEMA. That stuff doesn't get talked about a lot, except for by Ronnie. But other than Ronnie, I don't think people really understand what that means. And the way he's explained it to me is like getting an ANSI or a NEMA like approval of what standardized parts is like getting an FDA phase 3 approval. Right? It's huge. And what is it in electrical? In that category, I think something like 15 products have gotten ANSI and NEMA approval in the last, I think it's 50 years. And he's one of them. So like people don't understand how much work he has done on this code effort and ultimately what that'll lead to, which is this becoming a mandated product because of the safety. Not anything else. It's just the safety.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? The home builders and the hotel guys, they're all going to use it for the efficiency. That's what they want.
I wrote up a 47-page booklet on Skyx. And what I did was I went to Chat GPT and I said, I explained the Skyx product. And then I said, how could Skyx benefit that specific industry? You can take pain points for each industry and literally have a solution for that industry, right? For the Skyplug. There are so many advantages to that system that I never would have even, hospitals could prevent the spread of infectious disease. Why? Well, because it's voice activated or phone activated. Right? Which means you don't have to touch the light switch.
Yeah.
Never would have thought about that. But that was one of the things. You can go through every property maintenance. There are so many advantages. Even cleaning. Now, I know you don't live in Las Vegas, but think about all those.
We can't all be so lucky, Tim.
With all those little crystals, right? How do they clean those things? They actually have people up on ladders and on sky lifts cleaning each one of those little crystals, right? All you got to do now is pull it down, hose it off, and pop it back up. That's just another advantage to the product. There are so many more advantages when you really think about it. What does it enable you to do? It enables you to plug anything that needs electricity into the ceiling. If you want to put a camera up there, if you want to put a projector up there, if you want to do, there's a lot of things that can go into the ceiling that you didn't really have the ability to do before, that without it being a pain in the ass, right?
Ronnie gave me the example, like, if you were to put a light in a room, where do you want it? You want it center of the room for the ceiling. I put it in the article, but and then you start thinking about it for Wi-Fi. It's like the same thing. You want it in the center of the room and the ceiling. And then you start thinking about it for the smart home hub. Where do you want it? Center of the room and the ceiling. It's all really, if you're using a signal or you're propagating light waves or any other number of things, you want to be in the center of the room and the ceiling. That is prime real estate. And I never really thought about it because there's never been an opportunity to do anything with it because it's almost always occupied by a light. Now he's figured out a way to create, not only to create valuable prime real estate there that is usable, but he owns it. You look at all the patents, he's got something like 40 or 50 patents all around.
90. He's got almost 90 patents.
Yes, he's got 90 patents, but like 40 or 50 of them around the transmission of data and the smart home. And people don't understand that. It's like, oh, this is a lighting company. It's like, look at their patents. This is a tech company. This is going to be an AI company. There's a reason why they brought Mystige Khadifa. I'm sorry, I'm butchering the name. But yeah, the Microsoft AI lady. There's a reason why they brought her onto the board. Think about what Ronnie has done. He signals what he's going to do because he's very strategic, right? Him bringing her on the board tells you he's got an AI play. He's got an AI play here that he wants to use. Maybe that's aggregating the data, anonymizing it and selling it, or maybe it's something else. All right. We've already seen the CO2 sensors and the smoke alarms, and they already have built-in mic, to your point. They have built-in speaker. There's a lot of opportunities. And he reminded me recently that, quote, they've got 6 times more silicon space in their platform than you do on a phone. So like the opportunities are endless. No one thought about the number of things you could do with an app until it's out there and people start messing with it, right? When you've got that prime real estate, you're willing to license it out, you're willing to add new sensors, which they are. While we can think of some great ideas, there'll be things that we never even thought of that'll be huge 10, 15 years down the road.
I have said there will be companies that will sprout from this company. Okay.
Just like companies did for apps, right? It's a platform play. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be Apple, the biggest company in the world. I think they've got a great opportunity. I certainly don't think it's a $100 million company. I think you see this in the billions in the not too distant future. But that being said, is it Apple? It's probably not an Apple. If it is, fine, great. But we don't need it to be quite happy as investors getting in it at $1.20.
The market, and let's put it this way. I just had a really nice win with Red Cat and UMAC.
Congratulations.
And I can tell you right now that I view Skyx as a much bigger opportunity simply because it's a $500 billion market just in the United States. And this is a global product. Yeah. This is not a US.
Which is the whole point of the GE licensing thing, right? GE knows how to set global standards. They're the ones that are going to help set the global standard. And even more importantly, and I think a lot of people miss this, is GE is going to help defend the patents. So if someone tries to steal the patent or copyright infringement, guess who goes to bat for Skyx? GE.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Now, this is not to say that there's no downside risk.
No, there certainly is. Every company has risk.
There's risk with everything, right? There's no guarantees with anything.
No.
But I have yet to come across a product that could have as much of an impact on as many industries as Skyx, where it's safety, efficiency. I mean, really take a look at what this product does. And the analysts that are out there that have written stuff, they I think some kind of get it. I don't think they really get it. I don't think they really understand how much of a difference this makes. Even having a ceiling outlet just for being able to turn the property over to the owner without having to put crappy light fixtures in hallways and bathrooms.
Conditional occupancy permits. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, these are big things, man, that impact the cost of a job site, right? I mean, these are tangible things that people are not recognizing, and it will happen. It's going to happen a lot faster now that there's going to be actual product, a full line of product. That's going to, I think, accelerate things quite a bit. I do think influencers will get involved. And I think there's other opportunities to really make this a highlight for, they literally could target with very direct marketing each individual industry that will benefit from the product and specify their pain points and how the product helps. Right.
I really think 25 is a breakout year for Skyx. I mean, you've just laid the groundwork in so many different ways. I mean, we didn't even touch on the Rui partnership. But you mentioned about how you have to wire these things on the ground and then you can plug it in the sky plug. Not more, not with Rui partnership. They start making those things directly and they just send them to your house, right? The Rui partnership, the market is totally missing what that's about in such a big way. I obviously write about it, but the Rui partnership to me was the last piece of the puzzle. So it's great that you got the Home Depot because that's a retail and pretty decent sized commercial outlet. Then you've got Wayfair, which is a pretty good, how would I say it, more like design centered outlet. Okay,
Yeah.
and they're focusing on commercial. Then you've got your 60 websites for e-commerce and retail. But the question has always been for Skyx, or one of them at least, has been the cash. You mentioned briefly that they recently raised $11 million in a strategic round with, it was a preferred, just to be clear. It was a preferred. I believe the interest was 8% and conversion premium was 250% above last trade when they did it. So they did that, but who'd they do it with? You go and you look at it, it was all management. Management matched 3 outside investors that I'm aware of. One was the major hotelier, the guy that owns 60 plus Marriott's. And then my understanding is also 2 home builders went in. What does that tell you? They're so confident in this company, they'll take equity at twice the price, 2.5 times the price where it is today. And they're high volume users of the product. What does that tell you? It tells you they're probably getting ready to use the product. At least that's my interpretation. So I really think 25 is the inflection point. We see the first home builders. I think we see more home builders. I think we see the first insurers start to promote the product. I think we see the first hoteliers start to install the product. And then we move away from a niche retail play into a mass market adoption of high volume users. And I really think once you start to get some of these people, the others will be like, hey, wait a second. How come your jobs are so much more profitable than ours? Well, we're using this other methodology.
Bingo.
Yep.
One thing builders care about, supposedly, safety is supposed to be number one, right?
Yeah.
Number 2 is come in on time. And number 3 is under budget.
Yeah.
Right? That's all that matters to a contractor, man. Because if you fail at those 3 things, you got a problem, right?
Mm-hmm. And this helps all 3.
This makes every job site safer the moment you start using the product. Hands down. Every home builder, you are getting the home buyer a safer product right out of the chute because it doesn't have wires hanging from the ceiling, right? I mean, that's a fact. That's a fact. And if you want to wait until it becomes a mandate, well, that's on you. If it were me, I would be setting that standard without the mandate, right? If I'm a home builder, I want to have a safer product that I'm putting out on the market.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would think. So
also think about the customization, right? Like to your point earlier, you can put in the receptacle plate, right? And you don't actually have to put all the lights in like you would have to do now to get your conditional occupancy permit. But if you're a home builder, you get your CO and then you go, rather than saying, hey, we had to put the lights in to get the CO so we could even have a conversation. You go, hey, we got the CO. What lights do you want? Here's the lights that we offer. And then you turn around and you order it from Skyx and bada bing, bada boom, you install them in a day. There's no real hiccup in the timeline. And now you've given the customer a premium personalized experience. And people pay extra for that.
Yeah. You and I, we're going to have more conversations.
I'm sure. I have that feeling, Tim.
We didn't even really highlight, I mean, you did touch on it, but I have thought to myself, Skyx, Sky Music, right? You talk about the different recurring revenue models that come. What other light manufacturer has a recurring revenue model that goes with their light fixture?
And I'll do you one better. What other light manufacturer has any hope to try to increase the replacement cycle of lights? It's just Skyx. It's just Skyx, right? And that's one of the things I think the manufacturers really like is they see that if it's easier to change your light, lights will be changed faster.
I actually talked, it's funny you bring that up because I talked to the vice chair of the Lighting Association, And I said, well, I had some people telling me the Lighting Association will never allow this to happen because he'll have a monopoly on the entire market. And I thought, well, maybe they're right. Maybe they wouldn't let it happen. And then I talked to the vice chair and he said, I don't know who the hell you're talking to because this is the most exciting thing we've ever had come to our industry because right now, the average light fixture stays in place for 10 years, no matter what the design changes are, right? I mean, everything, the design changes, the tile, the paint, the floor, everything changes except for light fixtures because nobody wants to mess with switching them out. He says, by our best guess, not only does it do that, it expands, it opens up a product, a customer to them that they never have had an opportunity to serve. And I said, who's that? He says, think about the 21-year-old to 38-year-old male that moves into an apartment. You think he's ever going to change out the light fixture or the ceiling?
Yeah.
Unless he's an electrician, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you have an outlet up there and he's a Trojan football fan, and he knows he can go down and buy a Trojan football light and just plug it in. That is a customer they've never had access to, ever. Now,
I would challenge. I know you're not married, Tim, but I am, and I would challenge your listeners. Go ask your wives or your girlfriends if they had the opportunity to change a light in 60 seconds without tools. Would that light get changed more frequently? I bet you're going to find out that answer is yes.
All right, Chris, look, man, I really enjoyed this. I think people are going to get a lot out of this. But, you know, this is just our first hurrah. We're going to do this again for sure.
Sounds good, Tim. I look forward to it. And again, I appreciate inviting me on. And
how can people get in touch with you if they would like to get learn more about what you do?
Yeah, so you can see the article. I put the Skyx one out for free. Typically, I have them behind paywall, but you can. I wanted to kind of highlight the type of work I do, and Skyx is a good one to do that on. So that's on Unloved and Underfollowed on Substack. That's my Substack. I also have another one that's more like small cap data oriented called the Small Cap Report. So you can find either of those on Substack. Also have a Twitter X handle, I guess X these days. The handle is 1035_capital. And then I've got my website, which is 1035capital.com. There's a contact form on there if you feel like you really want to reach out to me, you can. So those are the places probably best to reach out.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, Chris. Thank you for coming in and doing this, man. And we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it. Look forward to next time.
All right. Hold on one second. I'm going to shut this off.